Hello, welcome to the second lecture. Today we are going to talk about the correlation between intimate partner violence, IPV, and problematic substance use, PSU. You probably have noticed in your practice that those two issues commonly coexist. But what is the scope of the real problem? Several studies reveal that there is a close relationship between being a survivor of IPV and PSU. However, not all of these studies provide accurate data about their prevalence. One limitation also is that the links between IPV and PSU have not been researched extensively in Europe. In the future, more research on this is needed in Europe. However, studies have shown that at least 22% of domestic violence shelter residents had current or past problems with alcohol or other substance use. In some studies, this number has been as high as 72%. These numbers vary depending on the population studied, how PSU is defined, and the methodology that was used. It is also worth noting that domestic violence shelters frequently ban substance use on site and therefore exclude women who are heavily reliant on substances. Thus, the percentage of PSU among IPV survivors is likely higher than what has been reported. In one study conducted with domestic violence shelter residents in the United States, more than 75% of the respondents reported using cocaine. More than 80% reported using cannabis, and 11% reported use in the past 30 days. Nearly 60% were found to be alcohol dependent, and 55% were drug dependent. In one of the few long-term studies on women experiencing violence and using substances, women who had experienced violence were twice as likely to report PSU 2 years later than women who had not experienced violence. Furthermore, women were 2 to 3 times more likely to report PSU for alcohol or drugs immediately after experiencing violence. On the other side, when PSU treatment services are studied, results show consistently that a high percentage of the women are survivors of IPV. A study conducted in the early 2000s in the US among women in methadone treatment revealed that 88% of the women had experienced IPV in their lifetime and 47% in the previous 6 months. A qualitative study in the United States on women using opioids revealed that of the 40 women participating, every single one had experienced some form of IPV in their lifetime. Accepting that a significant number of women suffer from IPV and PSU at the same time, an important question is the nature in which the two interact with each other. Women take different paths to IPV and PSU, with one condition typically leading to the other at first. However, once they are both present, they tend to escalate each other, producing a vicious cycle. Considering this, there are a number of things to keep in mind. First, survivors of violence may look to substance use as a way of coping with the pain, fear, and other negative emotions which accompany being a survivor of violence. Many women report that their substance use is a way to deal with negative emotions. Women are also more likely than men to be injected by their intimate partner, both the first time they use injected drugs and on a regular basis following this. Women are thus more likely not to have control over their injections. Third, some IPV perpetrators use substances as a tool to control their victim. A perpetrator may force a victim to use a substance or completely control when and how substances are used. There are several additional dangers or harms that survivors of IPV who are also dealing with PSU face. Professionals working on supporting these survivors should be aware of the following. First, acute and chronic effects of alcohol and other drug use may prevent a survivor from accurately assessing levels of danger. Second, there may be an increased sense of power from substance use and an erroneous belief that self-defense against an assault is possible. Third, Survivors of IPV and PSU may be less likely to seek assistance for fear of arrest, deportation, or referral to a child welfare agency. Thus, the importance of making them feel welcome when seeking assistance for IPV is vital, as is not pressuring them into seeking official help for their problematic substance use. Due to fear of arrest or referral to a child welfare agency, women may also be reluctant to talk about their PSU when reaching out for help about domestic violence. As important it is for IPV service providers to be aware of possible PSU issues, establishing trust with the client may be the most important first step. Social isolation could also produce further dependence on a partner, and attempts at sobriety or reducing PSU may be threatening to a controlling partner. Some violent men will actively encourage women to leave treatment. That is, if they are able to access services in the first place. Many services for IPV survivors are not available for women dealing with PSU. This means that for many women, there is nowhere for them to go to get support to deal with their issues and explore the linkages between them. Women may feel forced to conceal their PSU to get support for IPV, or feel that they cannot get any support for their IPV. Negative attitudes and discriminations against women dealing with PSU is one major barrier that women with co-occurring IPV and PSU face. Generally, there is a significant stigma against people experiencing PSU across communities. Women who often already have low self-esteem and negative feelings about themselves due to their intimate partner violence are likely to have internalized the stigma against problematic substance use and battle additional negative emotions such as guilt and shame. The stigma and discrimination against women who deal with both IPV and PSU can lead to a poor system response to survivors, further prolonging their victimization. Becoming sober could pose new risk for women with co-occurring IPV and PSU. Since intoxicated survivors are usually easier to control and substance use is sometimes used as a form of control, abusive partners may increase violence as the recovering survivor is less easily controlled. This is a very delicate matter and needs to be decided upon in a case-by-case basis in cooperation with the survivor. As a result of these close interactions, co-occurring IPV and PSU makes recovery more challenging in several ways. So, how does PSU hinder recovery from domestic violence? As I previously stated, substances are often used as a coping mechanism by survivors of violence to deal with the many difficult emotions that accompany their abuse. However, if a woman is abusing alcohol or drugs at the same time, it is difficult to heal the pain caused by violence. Counseling or therapy sessions could bring out strong emotions. Alcohol and drugs can weaken these emotions so that feelings get suppressed, making it difficult for the work to go forward. As a result, healing does not occur and the pain continues. Counselors should be aware of this and decide with the client when the time is right to start working on reducing their PSU. From the other perspective, how does domestic violence interfere with recovery from addiction? A woman may use alcohol or drugs to subdue her feelings about the abuse. When she stops drinking alcohol or using drugs, buried emotions may surface. These feelings of pain, fear, or shame could lead to a relapse if they are not addressed. Furthermore, in an abusive relationship, a woman's recovery may threaten her partner's sense of control. To regain control, her partner may try to undermine her recovery. Her partner may pressure her to use alcohol or drugs. Her partner may also discourage her from seeing her counselor, attending meetings, or completing treatment. Her partner may even escalate the violence. Substance abuse counselors should consider all of this when responding to clients who relapse or is otherwise not in compliance. It should also be considered when moving from one stage of treatment to another. So, how can a woman break this vicious cycle? There is no single answer to this question. Survivors respond to their unique situation in their own way and in their own time. And there are many paths to safety and recovery, unique to each survivor. Some women feel that they can only address one of the issues at a time, seeking safety first or sobriety first. Others feel they need to address both PSU and violence at the same time. In reality, approaches tend to be more dynamic, as survivors make choices along the way based on the reality of what is happening in their lives. There are many paths, and each person's choices are unique and should be respected. A survivor's decision to not stop substance using immediately or to decline treatment, advocacy, or shelter should not be viewed as a failure, neither of the survivor nor of their counselor. Decisions about choices and timing belong to the survivors. Listen to survivors and respect their decisions, even if they differ from what you think is best. Whichever path she chooses, a key factor is communication between service providers. A domestic violence agency could help a woman who is in an abusive relationship. PSU treatment could help if she has problems with alcohol or other drugs. No matter where she goes for help first, her counselor or advocate should support her by informing her of the other services and, should she accept it, make referrals. This ensures that she can get all the services that she needs. Women who start drinking as a result of domestic violence experience a range of negative feelings as a consequence of the violence, often compounded by a sense of shame and anger with themselves for drinking. They need their counselor to help them get rid of the shame and negative feelings, not to validate them. It is important not to allow negative attitudes and views on people who use substances to interfere with our responsibility to work with survivors experiencing PSU. Negative attitudes towards problematic substance use are very common across different societies. Acknowledging that the negative attitude of your community might affect you does not make you a bad person. We all have prejudices. Acknowledging it is the first step to overcome them. There are a couple of thought exercises that might help you deal with your own prejudices regarding PSU. Think about how substance use and abuse were discussed in your home, community, and country. Reflect on how this discussion or the experience of knowing someone dealing with PSU influenced your ideas and attitudes towards this issue. Additionally, think about your position, your cultural background, socioeconomic status, and ethnicity compared to that of the women seeking your services. What are the power differences? How do these differences need to be considered in your work? While counseling survivors of violence with PSU, it is very important to correctly frame the questions related to coping mechanisms so that they do not sound judgmental. Here are some possible questions that could be used to start talking about substance use with survivors of intimate partner violence. You can adjust them based on your client's case. If needed, you could be more direct with your questions, such as, many survivors also tell me the best way to cope is to smoke a cigarette, have a drink, or take something else. Have you tried that? Has it worked? Do you find that it is still working? One way to increase comfort and encourage honesty is by assuming some drug and alcohol use is already occurring. This can be done by asking, how much alcohol do you consume per day? What sorts of substances do you use? In this regard, your questions could also normalize drug use. This can be done by asking questions such as, some people find that the use of drugs and alcohol help them cope with the abuse. Does drinking or using drugs help you cope with your situation? Another approach would be to ask in the context of specific stresses. An example of this would be, what do you use to cope with the violence or pain? When communicating with clients in these situations, validation is also very important. This includes validation of the client's past choices and of their honesty. For example, you could say, no one has the right to hurt you. You did not deserve this. Or you could say, it is never your fault when someone harms you, even if you were drinking or using. You did not cause this to happen. An abuser chose to be violent. Another option would be to say, You deserve a lot of credit for finding the strength to talk about this. Your safety can improve your children's safety and well-being as well. Or you could simply say, I'm glad you found a way to cope. In addition to offering validation, ideally you would gently suggest other paths they could take as well. For example, you could say, drinking or using drugs could numb pain for a while, but there are safer ways for coping that could cause you less problems. By offering non-judgmental support, counselors can start to build trust and encourage honesty, two vitally important elements needed to treat survivors of violence with substance abuse issues. Comparing the different treatment approaches used with this group will be the subject of our next lecture. In the meantime, you can do the small assignment and move on to the next module. Take care and have a wonderful day.